Good morning, beautiful. It's lovely to see you. Nice to be out here again. Yeah, it's a bit breezy, but today I feel like being outside in it, so whatever. Let me just show you. It's a scruffy autumn garden I have not yet got around here because I had something else I had to do in the weekend, but we have some somewhat munched roses all the same. And if you really stop and look at that detail, it's still fabulous. Yeah, it needs the attention, but what I did, I'll show you. See that garage with that very prune looking climbing rose on it? That's what I did, and there's a lot more of it on the other side of the garage. So, good morning, Jocelyn! So that's what I did on my gardening day, because that was all I had time for, and it took, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. Big rose to prune. So yeah, there's weeding needs doing. But I have to say, I really love fumitory. That's what it's called. I love the foliage. It's so delicate. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, beautiful beings. And I love the flowers. They are so cute. So, yeah, I know it's a weed. Let's have some focus here. There you go. But I really love this stuff. Good morning, Linda. So, I'm kind of glad it's grown, but I have to obviously pull it out before it seeds. Because, you know, one is pretty, many is just a pain. And there are the rose hips that are going to go red. I don't prune them off. So it's kind of scruffy because I haven't got in here yet. But all the same, scruffy's kind of beautiful. We have Wilhelm rose flowers. Here's one that's fresh. And they do look, on my screen, the camera is rendering the colour well, which is nice because you can't always guarantee that red's going to come out right. Good morning, Abigail. Good morning, Linda. And good morning, Holly. It is great to see you. And there are still pink Japanese anemones. Look at the blush of darker colour in the middle. Sometimes there's so many of them that you don't really see that. But today I'm noticing it. And you know, a little spray of fresh flowers. See, they quickly get sunburned. I think that's sunburn. But they're lovely all the same. This is a rose that has to move. There's too much shade here now. And before they all disappear, what's becoming the last of the Luculia flowers. Look at those, aren't they fabulous? Morning, Jen. It's great to see you. Good morning, everyone who's jumping on and sharing this with me. Oh, I can smell the Luculia. They have a beautiful scent. So, yeah. And look, this is something else to appreciate. See, now all the flowers are gone, but look at all the seed heads. Aren't they kind of groovy? They turn into these little puffs of stuff that look like cotton wool. And you can sort of see that this is a little bit like a relative of a strawberry because it's the same family. You know, you just imagine those seeds spread out and with some flesh around them, and that's a strawberry, and it is the same ranunculus family. And, you know, this is New Zealand spinach going bananas. It's actually really good eating, and I need to decide if I'm going to freeze it or just, you know, because I can't keep up, can't eat all of it. But yeah, what to do with it. And here's the spiderwort, which is very pretty. Commelina calestris, so it's fancier name, from Mexico. Now I know because I checked it out because I got curious. Let's have some focus, camera, sort it out, come on. There we go. There it is. So it's a beautiful flower, and it only lasts half the morning. Disappears really quickly, they just shrivel up. So what else do we have? That's just about it. You know, the garden, see the rose has dropped its leaves, it needs me to deadhead it and prune it. But everything is just doing its evergreen thing. That's the magnolia, which I will have to prune. I have to prune it every year. And you can just see that's a flower that will come next spring. So there you go, and the colour that I pruned very hard has come back and is covered with its heart-shaped leaves again. So there's always foliage, and I appreciate foliage very much because it doesn't go away like flowers do. Flowers come and go, foliage is not quite forever, right? So today I want to talk about the situation that we have all had, either with ourselves or with others, or probably both, where something small creates a titanic volcanic eruption inside us or in someone you know, and you think, what the hell just happened? You know? One minute I was just minding my own business, and the next minute, car boom. And this was something I mentioned in passing. I think it was Friday, and one of you said, hey, would you talk about that? And I thought, well, okay, I'll talk about it. How does that work? Why is it that people completely lose the plot over something that on the face of it is like, what is the problem with you? Why are you losing your rag over this thing that is really quite small? Hello? Is anybody home in there? Why have you turned into a raving monster? You know, homicidal maniac or whatever over this small thing. So that's what I want to talk about today. And it's a weird thing because you think, well, why do people just lose it? And is it a situation of the last straw on the camel's back? Well, sometimes. Sometimes, yeah, things just mount up and then, you know, oh, I've had enough. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. I think what's more common is that the trigger, if you like, the stimulus, because we were talking a bit about triggers last week, the stimulus outside of us, by association, remember the brain takes a snapshot of everything that's important, good, bad or indifferent. If it's important, if it changes your state inside of you, at the point at which you experience an emotional reaction to something that's happened in your world, the brain takes a snapshot of everything that's going on and says, well, you know, that was amazing, I want to remember that, or oh, that was awful, I better make sure I can avoid that. That's what the brain does. It records things that it thinks are going to be necessary to help us to survive, either because they're really good or because they're really bad. That's just what the brain does. So, if that's what happens, and remember, it takes in, is it something like 200 billion? I've lost track of how many zeros there are in this number. I know it's got a 200 on it. It's either 200 million or 200 billion, or I don't know. How many bits of information per second that the brain gets, it receives, right? A massive amount of data every second. And you only get a little bit of it because there's a system in the brainstem called the reticular activating system, and somehow or other it's hooked up with a thalamic gate, and the thalamic gate is like this network of neurons, and it's literally like a filter, and it says, well, this is important and that's not, and this is important and that's not. So all of that information that is around you all the time, it's constantly being filtered, and it's processed, and I'm probably getting this back to front because I need to read that book again, and I've just started because I want to get this better. Part of the process of that information being filtered and sorted and worked through, and, you know, is this important or not, is that there is a comparison made through the thalamus, because the thalamus is like a junction box. So there's two, there's one on either side of your brain, sits on the outside of the emotional brain, the limbic brain, the bit in the middle, and the thalami communicate with the associative centres of the brain, which are the temporal lobes. And the temporal lobes have all your associative memories in them. So you remember that when you were 6, you picked a beautiful flower and it smelled really nice, and it was the first time you smelled a flower like that, and you remember the shape of it, you remember where you were, and it was a lovely day. And the next time you see that same flower, or something that's the same colour, or you smell the same smell, or there's something else in your environment that is similar, you remember it, right? That's how association works. The brain makes sense of our environment based upon what we've already got wired inside our heads, and it's the associative memory centres that do that. So, and it's always doing it. So the same thing with a bad experience. The brain does the same thing. And the thing is that while you may notice, I think it's 0.005% of the information that is actually coming into your brain is what you're consciously aware of. The rest of it gets processed anyway. And there's a thing about the amygdala, which is in the emotional brain. It's actually, I think this is right, because I'm just reading about it. See, it's good for me to learn stuff, because then I get to remember it and pass it on to you. The amygdala, before the information has got to the associated, well, no, before the information's got to where you can think about it consciously, the amygdala has already assessed the incoming information and decided if anything about that information means that we need to react instinctively. Christine, good morning, beautiful. So that's why you can have reactions before you're even consciously aware. You haven't noticed that you're on a narrow footpath and there's a car coming up behind you that's a bit close or a bit scary, and your brain is monitoring, goes, we need to get much closer to the cliff, whatever, to the cliff face, so it might be really narrow, but there is a part of you, and it's your amygdala, that is monitoring that stuff and says, we need to react to this before the conscious brain even has a chance to think about it or notice it. So that also is why you can just fly off the handle and think, what the hell happened? Because your amygdala recognized the threat and said, you need to fly into a rage now to defend yourself, or whatever it is. Or you need to feel scared immediately because this was really, really bad the last time. And it only has to perceive something in the environment that makes a match to a memory where you had that reaction to go, boom. It only has to make that match. And of course, the more powerful or the more often repeated, either a really powerful experience, trauma, or repeated, if you like, micro trauma, or just repeated insults. It's the same, and that little insult that you didn't really notice at the time, but over time, it's like, my dear mother, bless her, I feel so different about her now. But when I was younger, because of where she was at and what she was dealing with, which I understand very well, she used to call me a nuisance all the time. Just call me that all the time. And it was just this thing. And so, here I am, 54 and a half mumble years in this body, and I am finally, through the process of doing this work that I have learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, pruning out the deep sense of unworthiness and being in the way and being a nuisance that really has, in some ways, well, definitely, but I'm becoming more conscious of how it has limited me my entire life. Now, apart from her, I don't think anybody ever said, you're a nuisance to me. But that reaction, that feeling, which just built up over time, because there was no great trauma in my childhood. There was just ordinary, incremental insults from people that were going through their own stuff. Look, in fact, I anticipated people being irritated with me, and I spent so much energy trying to avoid feeling that feeling because it was so excruciatingly painful. And I didn't even understand what it was or why it was there. It was completely unconscious because it was just programmed into me as a young person. And I hope you get it. I'm not blaming her because I know what she was dealing with, and it wasn't fun. It was nobody's fault. It's just how it was. So there were all kinds of associative memories in my brain to make that particular very painful feeling fire up. For on the surface of it, things that, okay, they were, but not to feel like I just want to die and curl up and, dig a hole in the ground and get into it. Just, oh, God. And of course I didn't understand that. But that's an example from my life. So painful. And it made no sense to me. Why? So, and you notice that whatever the stimulus was in my later life, it just didn't matter. It had nothing to do with the fact that, maybe I had a boss who was having their own frustration, or maybe I just couldn't complete something to the standard that I felt it was needed, or, maybe I made a genuine mistake and somebody was annoyed with me. But that was the end of the world if somebody got angry with me. It was just, oh no. And I didn't understand it. And I didn't understand that these very painful, unconscious, incrementally built up, over time, programs were running, and why it was that the thing outside of me created this landslide of difficulty and I can't overcome this, and you know. So this is how it works. This is how our brains work. And the only thing that is important about the fact that something sends you off the deep end is to realize that whatever it is that sends you off the deep end, unless it's really obvious, you know, somebody died, they hit me, you know, unless it's really obvious cause and effect, yeah, that is a reason to have this reaction. I hope you know what I'm saying. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter whether the reason's justified or not. If you're having the reaction, just remember it has this epigenetic immediate effect on your body, so you're best to shorten that refractory period as much as you can. But if you can't see a good correlation between the cause and the effect, it really doesn't matter what the cause is. And a lot of us get so tangled up trying to figure out, now what was it that person said and why did I, and you know, and we try to solve the whole thing in the context of the current thing that happened, the current trigger, and it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's useless. It's a waste of time and energy. The only thing we have to do is overcome the emotion. Because remember, there's been a trigger in the outside environment that has made something fire up inside you that probably goes back 30 years or however long it is. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the stimulus has to do with that response. It doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is, okay, I feel like crawling under the earth and just dying. And I can't even imagine not feeling like that, right? That's the feeling, let's say. Or, my God, I want to kill that person again, like I have for the last 32 and a half years. Whatever that thing is that you recognize, it's crazy, but it makes perfect sense, Christine. It really does in terms of how our brains work. It's just we're so powerful. Whatever that is, the only thing you have to do is somehow get out of it enough to begin to imagine yourself feeling differently. And I don't mean even changing your state. I mean, okay, this is what happens when that button gets pushed. I have this experience. If I was able to unwire that button and forget about the button, if that button wasn't there, if I wasn't that person, how would I want to feel instead? That is the only question you need to answer. So I want to feel worthy. What the hell does that feel like? I want to feel safe. Oh, shit. Well, you know, I sort of had this vague idea that it doesn't feel like, you know, the landslide of bricks is going to land on me. I want to feel, you know, whatever it is. I want to feel calm. I want to feel at peace. I want to feel loved, you know, whatever it is. And then you have to revisit that enough to think, okay, well, what does it actually mean for me? If I feel worthy, what does that mean? Well, I guess for me now, and I think I told you about this months ago when it was new, you know, for me, one of the things that I started saying to myself is, I am worthy to make mistakes. I am worthy to get it wrong. I am worthy to upset you and still be loved. And that was something I worked with for a while, because it needed to be okay for me to screw up and to piss people off, because that was my worst nightmare. Screwing up, fine. I don't have a problem with screwing up. I just know, you know, you make mistakes, you learn, you practice, you get better. But to piss somebody off, that was the end of the world. So I had to change that. And I still find it difficult to say what being worthy means to me, but it's a feeling. And I know what the feeling is because I practice it. I practice it. I have a really good neural net for feeling worthy now, and I just feel really good when I feel worthy, and I feel able to do and be anything, and I feel like I can receive anything I need, and you know, it's all there for me, and there is no fear or whatever it is. That's what it means to me. And I keep practicing that feeling, because after all, I've got, you know, 50 mumble years of not feeling that way to change. So it's okay if it takes me a while to reprogram myself. So really, that's the thing. The only thing that matters is if you have a repeating reaction that happens and it's a bad feeling, is to decide how you want to feel instead and get busy paying attention to what that experience would be like, and literally beginning to give yourself different experiences, one way or another, of what that is like. And to give you some idea, just in the last week or so, I've been tuning into having the experience, wanting to have the experience of feeling immense certainty inside myself. Immense certainty. And it's more than I can do anything. It's like certainty that life supports me, and, that everything's there and I don't have to be afraid and feel unsupported and all of that. And that thought has gotten hooked up with something that I learned from Dr. Joe when I listened to the last Dr. Joe Live, and he just in passing mentioned about his definition of surrender. Sanjia, good morning, and I'll finish with this because I know I'm out of time now. And he said, my understanding of surrender has evolved over the years, and I remember he used to talk about the fact that it's this delicate balance between intention and action, and it's true, it is. But then he said, I grew up with this really great mother. He had wonderful parents. He had a beautiful childhood. And, when I was young and I asked my mum for something, I just knew that she was going to do it. I didn't know how she was going to do it or even quite when, but I knew she was. So I wasn't going to interfere and say, oh, hey, So it really boils down to surrender means trust, really. And so I put that together with this thought of what is real confidence and absolute certainty like. And I've been tuning into that for the last few days and having these really very profound experiences for me of feeling, the universe is like a great parent. And although I don't know how and when it's going to come, I can absolutely depend upon the fact that it will. And it's a completely different experience for me to just imagine that and give it to myself. And I can do that in deep meditation. So that's what I wanted to say. Whatever your reaction is, pay attention to what you want and build that in yourself. And that's how we change. Big love. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.